So with the impending release of the public beta client for Conan's next update, The Age of Heroes, there has been a lot of really important questions coming from the community. Whilst the public beta is only a little while away now, only those on PC can actually try it out for themselves, so people are hankering after some solid answers. Alongside that, I wouldn't be surprised if the devs are planning to have a Q&A blog or a dev letter about the update to answer the questions of the community. Therefore, I asked my Discord community for their questions, and I wanted to put them in this video to try and signal boost the more popular or important questions that haven't yet been answered. This process was self-selected and it is my community, so we do tend to lean more towards PvE and roleplay, but alas there are some solid questions here. So with that, let's see what the community are asking about. Firstly, the questions related to the living settlement system. There were far more questions about this feature than anything else, so I've got 5 of the most important ones here. So, let's begin. Question 1. Will thralls open and pass through doors, or if they are enclosed in a building, will they remain there? Question 2. Can we change where thralls go to keep certain parts of our base off limits to them? Question 3. Can we control which beds, chairs, etc. that crafters will use when they wander around? Question 4. Will thralls wander outside of your base or building? Question 5. Do worker thralls function on multiple benches at the same time? For example, can you use one smelter thrall on 4 furnaces so long as the smelter thrall is within range? All of those questions are quite important and ones I'd like to know the answers for myself. I think a couple of them, namely about how you control where thralls will go, will end up being the case of how you build your base. For example, keeping thralls away from certain areas will probably be achieved by ensuring thralls have their needs met in their nearby area, but that's just my assumption from what we saw on the stream. For that final question about worker thralls functioning on multiple benches at the same time, I've seen that come up a lot. We don't know yet if the follower count will go up, down, or remain as it is, but assuming it doesn't go up, having crafter thralls contribute to your follower count after they're placed is going to be a pretty rough adjustment period. One could argue it does serve to make the game harder by forcing you to optimise and balance the amount of fighters and workers you have. On the surface level I would agree with that in a way, though I'm far from the authority on the topic as I don't ever use thralls all that much. However, I did kind of get the impression on the dev stream that one thrall could potentially confer their benefit across multiple workstations at once. If that is the case, the adjustment might not be that bad if you optimise your crafting thralls. For example, having one named smelter able to give their bonus across multiple furnaces without even being present, let alone having to juggle them between furnaces, could be a good adjustment. We don't know for certain though, so until these questions get answered either by the devs or through testing on the beta client, it's probably the most important question here. Moving on from living settlements, we now look at companions. On this front, I think it was actually a pretty simple system, so there weren't too many questions about it. However, there were 3, so I'll give them to you now. Question 1. Will companions ever be added to the Isle of Siptar? Question 2. Will companions be more powerful than current thralls? Question 3. If your companion dies, will you have to complete their quest again to get them fully perked and as a follower? I added that last question myself, just out of an abundance of caution really. Followers are obviously in a lot less danger with the down but not out system implemented in game from the Age of War Chapter 4, but there is still a slight risk they could die. To be fair, I presume you would have to complete the companion's quest again to get another one if they do die, but I would like to know for sure. On the topic of companions being on the Isle of Siptar, that's something I've seen discussed on Discord, the forums and further. My take on it is this. Siptar's in a bit of a weird spot. It sounds like Freya and Lufeus stories are purpose-built for the Exile lands, and as Dennis said on stream, they've got voice lines relevant to that map, commenting on areas, races, people, so on and so forth. One could simply ask, why not record more audio and add them to Siptar too? I think it's a valid question, but ultimately I think it's probably not done out of practicality. Voice acting is not only time consuming but very expensive. Assuming the companions do have a good amount of dialogue, which it sounds like they do from the way Dennis described them, it could potentially cost thousands of dollars and tens of hours of time just to record the new voice lines for Siptar. Dennis also said the vast majority of people play on the Exile lands, which I can believe. Siptar did split the player base pretty harshly, which probably directly contributes to why the map isn't exactly popular, and to probably why the devs kind of regard it as a failure. I couldn't find any numbers on how many people play the Isle of Siptar, but let's be generous and assume it's anywhere between 10 and 20% of Conan Exiles' current player count. With that in mind, should the devs potentially double their costs and workload to add a companion to a map that, again, might only have 10 to 20% of the game's population playing? Harsh as it may sound, it's probably not the most intelligent use of resources, and to be brutally honest, the only way around it would be to have these companions' dialogue entirely neutered, so they just say generic things like, "Wow, look at this place," which I'm just not interested in. That being said, if we did get an animal or a demon or something like that as a companion in the future, I think that could be on both maps. Anything that just makes animal noises or is non-verbal will always be easier to implement on both maps because, well, they can't talk about their surroundings or the things they see. Of course, ultimately, it's only the devs that can answer the question about companions on Siptar, but that's just my take on what I think the answer would be. Finally, there were a few miscellaneous questions that might not exactly pertain to living settlements or companions, but I thought were interesting enough to include anyway. Question 1. Can we have thralls attached to planters or farming plots to make crops grow faster and grow unique types of plants? Question 2. Are there any plans to optimise or upgrade official servers to reduce potential performance issues? Question 3. Will we ever get merchant thralls so we can run our own shops autonomously? In terms of practicality, I think the question about upgrading servers is a rather important one. Additionally, I've always really liked the idea of people being able to have a player-owned store that other players can buy from. It's something that Fallout 76 has, and it's quite fun to visit other people's bases, check their vendors and so on. And honestly, I think it would be a good system for Conan, as it's currently only doable with mods. I think it would add a lot to the living settlement system in a future chapter, and I also really like the idea of having thralls that can aid with farming too. Better options for farming in general would be a good addition in my view. And there we have it, 11 questions for the Conan Exiles devs relating to this chapter of the Age of Heroes and for the future too. Again, there are some questions going around that have already been answered, or that we can probably infer a pretty reliable answer for from the stream, but I know some of the devs do watch videos that content creators put out, and seeing as there are a lot of questions going around at the moment, it feels only right to signal boost the ones that I think are probably the most important to know, especially as only a small portion of the player base will be able to actually test the update. On that note, the public beta client for the Age of Heroes Chapter 1 is currently scheduled for August 22nd as of the date of recording, so not long to wait at all, and I'll be deep diving all the new mechanics and systems to hopefully answer as many of these questions as possible and give you all the information you need to make sure you're ready for your base to come alive and to meet the new companions when the Age of Heroes goes to the live servers sometime in October. If you want to be the first to see all that news, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Take care, and I'll see you soon.